Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the agency of their dreams. Today, I'm talking with Wayne Pelletier from Resonant Pixel Co. He launched this in 2020 after more than 2 decades in the agency space. Wayne, thanks for joining me. How are you today, bud?
I'm great. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is mine. So we've got a really cool topic to dig into that I think is on the forefront of a lot of agency owners' minds, but there's a lot that gets in their way of actually executing on it. So I'm really excited to dig into like the productization of what we do as creative, as designers, etc. But let's start. Give us your backstory. Like, what led you up to launching Resonant?
Yeah, sure. I think it is something that agencies sort of want to get into, but struggle to approach or how to sort of seal the deal and get something published on that front, right? When it comes to productization, I started out as really marketing assistant, making sure the conference room had water and doing some cold email in 96 for what was basically the family business, making websites for local businesses and businesses in the plastics and polymers industry. And I liked it a lot. So I thought, well, I should probably get a job where I not only get to enjoy making websites, but also maybe get a title or something. Like, it just seemed like I needed to be a designer or a developer in order to build a career. At that point in time. So I really enjoyed the design aspect of it. I got a job as a designer and moved to Atlanta at a small startup called 360i. And, 20 years later, a couple of decades. I liked the way you said 2 decades. That really alleviates the pressure of saying exactly how many years I've been doing this. But so designer, art director, creative director, I have been thrown into the weeds of leading a large teams and having to make adjustments and course correct an operation. I have built entire creative departments from scratch. I have worked at tech startups. So I feel like I've seen not only how things work in this industry, but a lot of times how things break. And when I wanted to get started with this in late 2019. At the start of 2020, I launched this business right when we were going into a pandemic. So that was fun. And I've been running it ever since now, going into our 4th year in just a few months.
Awesome. Congrats on that. What was the driving factor of going out on your own? Were you at a shop that shut down or had cutbacks, or were you just like, I'm done working for the man, I'm going to be the man? Or like, what was the driving factor there?
It's something I wanted to do a long time. I had sort of fetishized entrepreneurialism for a long time, whether it's following businesses like, say, 37 Signals back in the day with their manifesto. Sure. And I wanted to create software maybe, and I wasn't always thinking about a services business, but my last stop was corporate at a large publicly traded company, and it was absolute chaos. And I'm a terrible fit for a corporate operation. Just that lesson learned. So, they were extremely generous in that separation, as they struck about 16 or 20 jobs from director and VP. That, it's an EBITDA challenge. I would say that was, okay, I've got a window. This seems like the best opportunity I've ever had and may ever have, where there was about 6 months of runway. So I was like, let's just do this and figure it out. So I promised my wife if I could generate enough revenue in the first few months to make it appear as though I could reach a specific income goal, then we'll continue on. If not, then we'll polish up ye old resume.
Yeah. I'm glad you have not had to blow the dust off the resume yet. Did you go into this thinking I'm going to launch this as so you run it as a subscription model. Is it solely subscription model, or do you do like project-based work, or how did you land on the model that you're on now?
There are still a few projects, and I'll explain that. But I started out take all comers. I just wanted to prove I could earn a living, so leverage my network, and it was all kinds of projects from social websites, branding, brand governance, and that was amazing. After a while, as the only full-time employee for a really small company, it can be hard to support multiple platforms and multiple, and media outlets, right? So you can't hire and build SOPs and build all these things and hold everyone accountable really well in a detailed way and scale all of it. It just wasn't happening. And there are probably listeners shaking their head right now, like, duh. I would say that I would say the productization came when I was just I was kind of sick of the feast and famine cycle of project work, where you have a couple of great months, a couple of great projects, and then there's a couple of darker months, and having to live through all of that, which requires, some amount of skill, but also, not being able to predict. Like, one part of a small service business that was bugging me was the 90-day outlook was just so depressing, and the 180-day outlook was don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Because really, future revenue seemed like, to me, it was only predicated on the size of the pipeline, quality of the pipeline, and my close rate. And I didn't like how that math works out. So my thought was, well, I'd love to have some monthly recurring revenue. And like I said, I'd always thought about maybe software as a service, even though I can't make an app. So I thought, well, let's productize the service offering and make it so that I have monthly recurring revenue, but we're doing websites on a specific platform that really help a specific audience, and just try to grow that. Like, do one thing and do it over and over again and do it well.
Yeah. It's interesting because I know a lot of shops, like you said, people were probably listening and be like, duh, but there's still that hesitation to either lean into a niche, lean into whether it's a niche vertical or niche service, or lean into what you're talking about. Like, how do I find recurring revenue? When I had my agency, we leaned into email marketing as that was our recurring revenue. And we white labeled, at the time it was called Campaign Monitor. And we made enough money that like it covered a lot of our overhead, but it was a support service to the overarching branding, web, ongoing marketing, things like that we were doing. And so it wasn't everything, but it was a good amount. And there's other schools of thought that say, let's shift to retainer models, because then we can see the 180, 365 pipeline, revenue stream. And in a project-based world, at 90 days, you're falling off a cliff with projected revenue. So it's a scary thing. You said all in, I'm going to triple down on my niching of a single platform so I can create efficiencies and SOPs. Not necessarily a vertical, but a size of vertical, and then a pricing model. So you just tripled down on all of the niching that could be done, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. We can talk about what really makes productization successful in that it's more of a mindset shift than it is, say, a process shift. But when you niche into a specific vertical or a specific audience or into a specific platform, it helps with operations, right? Yeah. So you can be consistent in what you're developing and continue to improve. And I know often there's anxiety about niching in these ways. The challenge is there are so many businesses that aren't necessarily happy with the platforms they're on. So replatforming isn't the challenge everyone thinks it is a lot of the time. It's just whether or not you're having the right conversation. And it was interesting. I had a conversation recently with someone who was concerned about price changes because their cost of living has changed, the cost of providing services, salaries have gone up internally, and a lot of those things. And my question was, okay, are we changing our pricing, or are we just changing whom we're supposed to be talking to?
Yeah.
And with productization, that's sort of part of it, right? Like, instead of, to your point about retainers, which are still largely time and materials based, it's an estimate, right? I would say with productization, you eliminate scope creep and the idea of scope altogether. And you have that luxury because hopefully you've niched into a single platform. So they're more predictable challenges. You know what they look like. You can bake them in. You can say, okay, all of the things that used to bug us about scope creep, they're all now included. So basically, everybody's paying for scope creep.
Yeah.
Right. So
what does that do to your mindset on commoditizing the services? I mean, you're turning it into a product. I can grab one off the shelf, add it to my cart on your website, and say, sign me up. Does that, you've been an art director, you've been a creative director, you've moved pixels on screens, you still move pixels. Like, what does that do to that mindset of, being a designer versus a business owner, I'll say?
Yeah. I think we're coming from into an era where there's a realization with digital media about how ephemeral it is or isn't. And we're realizing now more things have less tangible longevity than maybe fewer things have less tangible longevity than maybe we thought. Because of our age, we're thinking books, we're thinking newspapers, we're thinking CDs, records, right? And flash files can't be opened anymore. Your old Dreamweaver files, your old Fireworks files, all of these things that you can't open because you made them with a Mac or a PC 25 years ago. And some digital files even corrupt over time. So the idea that we are building something that we physically, technically own is, I think, an outdated idea. And transitioning to the mindset of this brochureware, this commerce platform, this digital media, these things are more of like a tissue, like use and move on to the next one. Always the ability to start from scratch and or build from what you have built in the past in order to change where you want to go, like the vehicle that gets you there, instead of riding the vehicle that got you to where you are today. And in productization, we're commoditizing the platform, but like I said, there's a mindset shift here where we're talking about access to expertise. The website is kind of just thrown in as part of the deal. It's a value exchange, right? But they ask me all kinds of other questions. It's like, when you were younger, did someone, like, you made somebody a website or did their brochure or something like that, and then they were like, hey, can you help me with my email signature? Can you help me with business cards? I need a yard sign. Like, because they know you, like you, and trust you, they're going to ask you to do all kinds of bananas things. So the same thing with what we do now. I still get asked to do those things all the time, and the answer is no. But when we're talking about platforms and leveraging a productized service, we're talking about an engagement with people, and that's what I mean when I say access. Is that we're talking about lifetime value. So I had sold somebody a kayak. We got to chatting about what we do, just Craigslist. And this is a brief example. And what happened was I make websites, and he was part of an ownership group that was starting a burrito restaurant here in Atlanta. It was Moe's Southwest Grill. So this was 2002. And I made the first Moe's.com, and I made several versions of Moe's.com since. I don't work with the current ownership, so I don't do their website now. But, I think they went on to start 6 other franchises, right? And I probably made them a dozen websites. All of them were small. They were startups at the time, so $5,000-8,000, whatever. And if they were just paying, I think I made about $70 $100,000 over the years. And that was all freelance income as a side hustle from my agency gigs. So if they'd have just been paying me like $270 a month for the last 21 years, I don't know what's like 240 grand. Have I actually left money on the table by charging for a project? So that's the idea, is instead of a launch being the end or a goodbye or a thank you for coming, it's really just the beginning of the engagement. And that's what I mean about, lifetime value, all that.
Yeah. Have you found any downsides to productization and kind of just running on this model for the past 4 years?
Really only one, and it comes from going all in. It's called, it's been written about. I'm not inventing this. This is called the dip, or the pit of despair. I think Seth Godin has written about it, as have others. In that, and I think Built to Sell talked about it too, the book. Yep. There's a transition point where you're doing the same amount of work, you're getting paid technically that month for the next couple of months, a fraction of what you would have earned as from project fees. So in order to scale that, you kind of have to go all in, even though there's reluctance because it's painful. So if you don't have a cash runway, then you have to take on other projects. So to answer your question, I'm almost out of that pit. So I am still doing some projects. And a lot of times it's someone's just not comfortable with the model. So they're like, but can you still do it on a project? To which, depending upon the brand, I'll say yes. Hopefully I get to the point where there are enough subscriptions, and I'm almost there. I'm just a few subscriptions away to being able to say, no, I'm sorry. That's not what we do. And another thing happens, like I mentioned the email signature and the yard sign and all the ridiculous things people ask you to do once they know you, like you, and trust you, is they'll say, well, my project is really special, so I don't feel like the price that you're charging is fair. I know I'm going to need more of your time and attention. So will you sell me a subscription at a higher price? To which the answer is yes. So I have several subscriptions that are much higher price that are not listed on the website, that are for the special flowers that feel like their project is so unique that is a demand. And I'll be honest, that's not usually the case, but if they feel like it's a fair value exchange, then I certainly as hell feel like it's a fair value exchange.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my mind was going, was like, if somebody comes to you and they've got this project and it will shoehorn into one of your 2 or 3 models that you've got on the website, but really you're leaving money on the table because they've got far more money than that, or they need far more functionality, page designs, whatever you want to call it. They want 3 original designs and your buckets only allow for 1. Like, a lot of shops will say, we're going to do the diagnosis first, and then we're going to give you the scope and the budget and the timeline. And yours is already kind of predetermined. So, I mean, is there the opportunity of leaving money on the table?
Yes and no. There might be some short-term money on the table, but keep in mind that over a period of time, I'm going to make a lot more money from these brands, and they're never going to write a big check. So it protects their cash flow, and I earn more income. My exit is different. Like my goal, the big goal for the business that I'm creating, is probably different, and that's what I'm working toward. So the idea is to build a company that can make these websites on this platform at scale. I don't want to be making the websites. I don't even do every aspect of the websites anymore. I've hired that role. So one of the beauties of this sort of systemization and the productization of this service is that I know at a certain number of subscriptions what role I'm hiring next. And then at the next level, what role I'm hiring then, so that I can systematically remove myself from the business and eventually probably either sell the business or find another outlet for the business. The idea is not for me to be the harbinger of quality and or a bottleneck in its ability to scale.
And I think a lot of owners think that's a great thing, but if they're doing project-based work and they're so deeply mired in either account management, sales, whatever, they're going to have a much harder time getting there, where even with the dips that you're talking about, with each new level, you're going to experience those dips, but you know what to hire for and how to plug somebody in to alleviate that when you've got 3 more subscriptions or 6 more subscriptions or whatever. But you have a greater chance of systematizing, that's the word, because you're on one platform. You don't have, we're jumping between Webflow and WordPress and Figma and Node and all these things. You're on one platform, so you know the skills that you need there. And so talk about the platform that you chose and like what drew you into that and how that's helped elevate your profile as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. That's changed over time, at least when I think about it, but all for the better. I chose Squarespace because I like the conversations. It's a stable platform for small businesses. It's a much better decision than is freeware that doesn't even work out of the box, right? I love how customizable WordPress is, but it's not a great fit for a small business that just needs this thing to run, be affordable, and get the hell out of the way so they can run their business. And sometimes we as dudes just like to tweak stuff, to be honest. And that is definitely a platform that loves to be tweaked. The challenge is it's not Apple, right? So if it just needs to work, you've got a problem. So what I like about Squarespace is, as hosted CMSs go, they are by far the largest, and they're incredibly stable, and it's software that works. They're sort of the Apple of the website world, where you can get up and running very quickly and affordably, but you can also do it in a way that is extremely expensive. And because of their scale, they're in a unique position in the market, where they have, it's like 180 million websites, 4 billion page views a day, and 99% uptime. It's pretty amazing feat. And yeah, it can be a little closed like any rose garden is, but it's a platform that allows for me to be able to hire predictably for talent, build SOPs, and deliver. Like, the whole idea is that the website shouldn't be something you're on the calls at 2 a.m. to discuss because somebody's upset. So.
No, I love it. I leaned into Squarespace 100% for the same reasons. I don't want to be updating, WordPress core. I don't want to be updating plugins. I don't want to rely on plugins from some kid in the Czech Republic that, stopped doing updates and now my website's broken. So I do love it for that.
I know.
Talk about the audience that you focus on, small businesses, which in most agencies' eyes are like, they don't have budget. But in your case, you're super budget friendly, but not on the cheap side, budget friendly in the cash flow sense, by allowing them to pay for their website over the course of months and years. What's the mindset behind small, medium-sized businesses?
Yeah. Well, they're businesses that there isn't much of a market to serve them at a high level. They wouldn't normally be able to pay for someone who has experience that I have as a creative director and art director for big agencies working with really big brands. Like, they couldn't possibly afford to hire a big fancy agency. So I come in saying, look, typography, photography, we're going to talk about a creative brief here that's going to allow me to really understand your best customer model. And we're going to create a site that converts, and a site that exactly, executes your vision for your brand in your market locally. And they wouldn't normally be having those conversations. Certainly not at that depth. And I think they find a lot of relief in it. At least that's the feedback that I get. That they're comfortable. They're like, thank goodness someone has my website covered so I can make sure my vans are on the road. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can be that mind for them, the thinking about things that they don't even know to think about because of the experience that you have. And so, yeah, it's pretty invaluable. I love what you're building. I'm really grateful that you've been able to share it with us. I want to shift gears real quick, couple random rapid fire questions, the answers to which can be any realm of personal, professional, digital, tangible, whatever. And the first is, what's a book, a show, a hobby, or something that you're just like fully obsessed with and can't get enough of these days?
I am completely obsessed with Alex Hermosi's $100 million offers. And his new $100 million leads, I'm just getting into it, and it's just broken my mind, but my mind hasn't put the idea back together again like it has with $100 million offers.
Yeah. Yeah, his content is really brilliant. What is a tool that you've recently integrated into your life that you think, how did I live without this before?
I was going to go with the new bottle opener that I absolutely love, but I'm going to be honest. Why didn't I buy Text Expander for my Mac like 10 years ago? It's like $20, and I can't believe how much crap I'm putting in it now. And I'm just like pow pow with 2 characters, and I'm just firing off these massive messages of services for replies and comments and Slack for, oh my gosh, why did I spend $20 on this thing 20 years ago? I have no idea.
Perfect. I love that one. And then finally, what is an invaluable piece of business advice that you can share with the listeners?
You know, I don't know if it's business advice, and there's a lot of that out there. But what I find, certainly as an entrepreneur, would be to not ride the highs as high as you'd like to or feel inclined to, and not take the lows as low as you may feel inclined to. Just go on the ride, make the best choices with the information you have at any given moment in time, and continue to plow through and believe in yourself. Like, I used to carry it downstairs, a home office, right? So I'd be really ecstatic because good news just came in, or really upset because bad news just came in, or something that is challenging and I haven't figured out. And maybe I'm carrying some of that emotion around. And then my wife gave me a pretty hard time about that pretty soon after I started the business. Said, your commute is gone now, so you don't have time to decompress. So as you're walking down the stairs to come and join us, think about how maybe you can leave that stuff up there. And I really took that to heart. And that was years ago. Now I think I do a pretty good job of it, but I still catch myself. Even today, this morning, just felt like I got kicked in the face by something. And I was like, nope, not taking it, not going there with it.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody. Wayne, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me. Really fun. Really fun.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.